Club.
Am I streaming now? I think I'm streaming.
Wait, let me confirm. I don't see a stream playing. Let me play it. Club. Yes. Yeah, you are streaming, yes.
Okay. And does
Am
it
I streaming
sound
now? I think
amazing?
I'm streaming.
Let me confirm. But yeah, slight delay between the Discord call and that, but yes.
Yeah, of course,
I'm going to yeah.
Okay. Sounds good then. Then I will get started with it. Let me open up my own live stream so I can see the chat. That'd be great, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's working, and I turned off the volume so I'm not a bad streamer who is streaming the audio of the stream on the stream. So, okay.
That would be good for like echo stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I could echo. That would be pretty terrible, but okay. So, yeah, let's get into
3
it. Yeah.
years already. Yeah.
I mean, how many? One of them is me.
One of them is me.
Exactly. There's one other person who knows.
You're famous. 3 years already. Damn.
Whoa, amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, let's get into it then. What do you think? Oh, okay, yeah, there is somebody. Hey, how's it going? Okay, so to preface all this, we just got finished with a separate book club that was hosted on Matthew Sanabria's stream for the Linux and Unix handbook. Or not the Unix hand, is it? Oh yeah, it was the Linux Unix system sysadmin handbook. And there is a section on scripting there, which showed me how much I didn't know about scripting and Bash. So I was recommended this book by Dev, who's here now, and decided, yeah, let's get into this. So yeah, so far I've read a little bit of this book, and for this stream, you should not have had, you don't have to read any of it so far, because this is just getting started. Make sure stream settings are all working, and from there, for the next stream, I expect us to have read 1.5 chapters. We're planning on doing, so the introduction and the structure should be fairly short, and then get through part 1 here, as well as half of part 2. So that would be up to loops, because there's 4 in each, and then after that, the next half of that, and half of part 3, and then the final one will be on advanced Bash, which I expect to be a bit more difficult. So we should be done in around 3 weeks. And beyond that, the bit of the book that I've done, I've really enjoyed the teaching style of the book. So for example, they ask you to figure some stuff out on your own, try out all the commands, and that has been very nice for me so far. Or like look through your Bash profile and see what exactly is going on in there, because that's something I'd never done. Cool.
Yeah, I the reason I like this book is because I have a hard time just reading through documentation if I'm not trying things out. So that thing is like inbuilt into the book. Like, you know, you cannot move forward without like because they don't give you any answers. So you just have to type out the commands and see what they do to move to the next section. So I think that that was a good way to get you engaged into whatever you're doing and just not tell you the answers.
Yeah, like for example, getting to the end of what is Bash. Maybe this is, yeah, we're still in here. Variables. Oh yeah, so like at the end of here, there's some exercises. So like, do all of this stuff. Find out what everything in Bash verse info means. Figure out the output of env in your shell, what all of this means. So just a really nice way to get really familiar with everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have all of those per chapter at least, and very nice. So yeah, we'll go through, like I mentioned, what is bash, flopping and quoting, which is always confused me, variables in
And me
bash,
too.
functions, pipes and redirects, scripts and startups, and then as well as the first half of this, which is command substitution and evaluation, exit codes, test, and loops.
How do you
Yeah.
plan on like going through the material? Do you want to like go through some of the interesting exercises that you happen to be like, you're gonna go through the thing. So are you gonna go through the exercises on your stream?
Yeah, good call out. I think anything that's like any questions anyone has, I would be glad to answer, or at least try to
Mm-hmm.
answer. And then
Yeah.
anything that I found interesting enough to take note of while doing it, we'll talk about. So nothing too formal, really. But I'm
I
sure
got
we'll have good stuff to talk about because I already found the start of the book pretty interesting.
it.
Yeah,
For
and
your
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead, finish.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, did you have any prior, because I feel like the book is geared towards beginners as well as like, I will say intermediate users. So I'm like, since you found the book interesting, I wanted to ask, like, do you have like any prior? I know you like do a fair amount of work with Bash. Did you go through something else before you started using Bash on your job?
I haven't learned anything formal really. Like if I needed something, I would look it up. Like I need to loop through something, so I'm gonna look up how to do a for loop. I need an if statement, so let's do that. Or
Hmm.
like chat GPT your way through it, because oftentimes bash scripts are really pretty short and I can verify if they work well or not. They're not really meant to
Yeah.
be like amazing production solutions for me most of the time, so
Hmm.
I haven't cared all that much. But I think there's a good
Mm,
balance to be had between, like, eventually you should move over to a more full featured programming language once you've done enough. But I think it's also good to know a bit more about it to do more in your shell. And Linux Unix System Admin Handbook was my first bigger foray into that. Like I'd done a little bit of it before, like learning the basics like PWD, CD, all of those. But there's quite a few
yeah.
more that I learned from that the Linux Unix sysadmin handbook. That's super long to say, but I learned things like cut and I have to think of what the other ones are. Cut, sort, things like that. Just a lot of other
Yeah.
very helpful utilities. Yeah, cut has been super helpful, like surprisingly helpful in various scripts I've written. So nothing
Mm,
super formal. The biggest, most formal thing that I've done through it was what we went through in the Linux sysadmin handbook. I'm gonna skip out on the Unix
mm,
part there because it's so long to say. Yeah. What
yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have done a couple of things for like Bash. I think there are some YouTube videos which are like from 10 years ago. I remember that. Like, when I first started using Git Bash, I thought, might as well, start learning some of it. So I remember there are like some, I'm skipping the name. I really want to credit the guy, but like, on YouTube, they have some material like, I think the videos are from 10 years ago, 12 years ago at this point, even. But there's this one guy who goes through like bash shell and how to do like basic stuff there. That was like pretty useful. And I think I have like told you about like wargames.net. I think if you go through like the bandit thing, that's it's not for bash, but it just like pulls in all the most of the Linux like common utilities that you're going to be using, like Git and other things, like SSHing into like things. So yeah, that was like before this book, going through that was like also like helpful. So yeah, those are like the kind of, I guess, like from apart from like trying to learn things on your own while you're at the job and you're doing stuff and you need to get something done, um, which is your way of learning, which is amazing. And I think that's a really good way to learn. You just like take basically learn what you need to learn to do the job, and just move on. But yeah, apart from that, like those were my two sources before this book happened.
Yeah, and since we're getting into general motivations for this time around as well, I think it's good to mention that. So, like, you could learn as much as you need to get the job done, but then
Hmm.
that oftentimes isn't enough to teach you a better way of doing it later. Like, if you do just enough and you get it done, then you probably
Hmm.
missed out on a nicer way to go about it. Like, a bunch of the commands that I learned through the shell or learned through the
Yeah,
Linux
that's a good
sysadmin
point.
handbook were brand new to me. A bunch of like
Yeah.
the stuff from like the TCP/IP chapter I'm not really going to use day to day, but now I know that ping is sending ICMP echo requests, so that's just good stuff to know because I can get more of a fundamentals. And same thing with like a bunch of other things, like just learning bottom up is very helpful, and I had not done that for quite a bit. So learning this stuff for when I need it is also pretty great. And this one's a pretty short way to get far, far better at using a tool that I'll use every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, good point that you brought up. Like when you're like just getting the job done, you just like go with the most hacky so like possible solution. And yeah, it's a good idea to like go back and see if there's a better solution out there by checking if there's any like formal literature on these kind of things. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep, there have been many times where I've done things the hard way. Like some really obvious ones are like for DNS, for example, where I just,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, did not want to read anything about DNS whatsoever. And every time I had to set up a domain, it was a multi-day ordeal. And then I read up for like an hour, how does this work? And I figured out how name servers work, and it made everything so much easier to do, even though I don't need to interact with it too much when I'm actually setting up the records. But now when I do it, it's literally just I know exactly what to do and I do it. And another similar thing happened with like I made some weird config change to my bash RC, and
Hmm.
I spent months just running source bash RC again every time I opened my shell, which
Uh,
was my own fault for not looking into it. But it turned out it took 15 minutes to Google when this file ran and figure out why it was happening wrong because it was in the wrong order. And
hmm.
yeah, so just knowing these fundamental things instead of running away from them will be super helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah. You said something about like learning bottom up or
Yeah,
bottoms up. I
bottom
feel like
up.
bottoms up is something different. Yes. Okay. So
Yes,
what exactly do you mean by that?
of course, we're not consuming alcohol on the stream.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
The bottom up way is not to say we're taking the bottom and putting it up to drink something, but we're saying we're learning from the foundations up from the top. So, for example, maybe you're building a project and you run into an issue you need to solve. That would be a more top down approach. You start from the issue and you work down until you figure out what you need to do, versus a bottom up
Hmm.
approach would be like you're building a React app and you learn the fundamentals of React by reading through the documentation rather than starting up an app and solving those issues as you come across them.
Hmm. Um, I know we are like kind of straying a little bit from the topic, but I wanted to ask, like, you said you basically outlined these two approaches to learn something, which, as your like, from your for your day to day job, which one do you like, you have to use like mostly?
It's a mix of both. So sometimes I truly can avoid learning everything about something, but that
Mm.
can lead to issues down the line. So it's definitely a mix of both. Like sometimes like starting out bottom up, I tried to do that,
Yeah.
but it was hard for me to grasp like the larger architectural organization of everything from the start without understanding what the purpose of things were. So starting
Mm.
top down and trying bottom up again and so on, going back and forth was pretty helpful for me. And
I
so
see.
sometimes if it's understandable enough to grasp everything, I'll go bottom
Hmm.
up, and but other times I'll go top down if it makes more sense. Like for example, like learning Java, like I know enough about it that I can pretty easily figure stuff out, and I it doesn't hurt me too much if I don't know all of the fundamentals because I can figure those out. The
Mm.
programming fundamentals carry pretty well, and that works out for me. But for other things like a whole web server that I needed to learn, if I don't know some
Mm.
things, then there's a lot that could go wrong. Or like even smaller, like a very generic example, like regex.
Yeah.
Regex, you can get something done. You can get a regex that works. But if you
Yeah.
don't truly understand the regex, then you
Mm-hmm.
could very well open yourself up to like a DOS attack through having a really poorly constructed regex that's
Mm.
like, for example, like rewriting URLs. You could make something that's truly poorly designed that would then be rewritten, but it would
Mm-hmm.
take so long to figure out if it should be rewritten, or just generally like anywhere you're using regex. So it's good to know more of the implications of what you're doing a lot of the time too. So to answer your question, I really do not have an answer. It's like a bit of a mix of everything because learning
Mm-hmm.
just bottom up doesn't seem to help all the time.
Mm.
But then once I have enough top level issues to go find and dig deeper, then that's
Yeah.
also helpful. Yeah, it doesn't really make all that much sense, but a mix of both, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, you start from bottoms up. You have like maybe a problem, and then you like get into situations where you feel like I may be able to. I can like solve this thing better if I have like some higher, basically a way to like look at this like high level picture of this thing for which I may need to grasp the fundamentals, and then you like actually go out there and study the theory, which is like top down way of learning things. Um, if I have to ask you, I know you got into like this thing Bash from like scripting, and I think you touched upon it a little bit. Like, what got you into this whole thing of like because of like right now you're like messing around with Bash. So what thing which was like connected to your job? What thing was connected to like your bottom level thing that you want to do solve because of which like you are here right now?
Nothing specific to my job. Like we have access to Bash, but Bash is not the main shell that's used because we're using Windows. So I can run Bash
Mm.
scripts, but they're not entirely the same as something like that. I think it's just generally helpful, more or less. Like I read through like I remember I read through the Pragmatic Programmer and it recommended
Yeah.
learning more about your shell, and it makes a pretty good point
Mm.
of if you have shell utilities you can connect them all together, but if you have a
Mhm.
GUI you have to hope that it works or do a lot of um, low level maintenance to hopefully string these things together. But yeah, just
Mhm.
generally like I found a lot of value out of the shell, and learning it means I can do a lot of different things pretty quickly, and it's just a generally helpful utility. So like nothing too specific, just writing scripts is helpful, and knowing how to
Mm.
do them better and knowing of different command line utilities that will help me out to do my job is pretty helpful. Like learning from Linux System Admin Handbook, we learned about T,
Mm.
and T has been pretty helpful now that I know about it. I can
Mhm.
write to a file and print to standard out at the same time. So just generally knowing my tools well, nothing very specific about it. And
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
nothing too specific.
Mm. Just wanted to have like a better idea about like the better knowledge of the tools that you are using at your job, and basically wanted to do more with them and get basically more familiar with them.
Not even
That
just
was
on my
your
job. Like
motivation.
I use
Yeah.
Bash. Like I have Bash on this computer right now and use
Yeah.
it as my main shell. So it would be great to know all of this stuff too, there and anywhere. So not specific to
Mm.
my job, but everywhere.
Okay. Gotcha. 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 Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plan on like learning other shells after Bash, or do you think like the knowledge you learn here will, from what you have gone through the book? Do you think have you like messed around with other stuff like with other shells, like some of these stuff? Maybe like trying out globbing, how it is in like maybe PowerShell or like um, any other shell that you use.
I've done a little bit of PowerShell, but I mostly just use it to shut down WSL if I need to and winget. So I don't use it all that often. Mostly I just use the shell for development purposes. I think it'd be great to eventually, but I'd like to know one shell well before moving on to other shells, and then I can more
Mhm.
truly appreciate the differences between them all.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
But yeah, I don't have any plans right now to look into other shells, but it is a goal I have for the future eventually, like see why do people like fish or ZSH.
Yeah, good. Yeah, the GSS is another one that's like quite popular from what I've seen. So yeah, good point.
It's the default on Mac, so it has to be a little popular at least, right?
Yeah, more than a little popular actually.
Okay, Taiwo in the chat, I hope I said your name correctly, says, how many chapters are in this book? And I'm considering chapters to be these parts. I don't know what these are chapters. So there's 4 parts to it. So I would say 4 chapters, but they're not explicitly labeled as such. But yeah, it's a pretty short book. It's around 150 pages. So it looks like we'll be reading around 52 pages for the first book or the first session, and then after that we'll get to the end of chapter 3, another 50 pages, and then the last part is 108 to 144, which will get us 38 pages or 36, maybe 36. I'm bad at math, but yeah, around 4. Yeah, it's a pretty short read, and it's been pretty understandable. Like my background in it is having used it for a while, and also just going through the Linux System Admin Handbook gave me a good background on a bunch of this stuff. So some of it's review, some of it hasn't been so far. Yeah.
I think it's just my screen, but like I have a smaller monitor, so like I think it would be a little bit better if you, at least for me, if you like zoom in on the PDF a little bit, so I can like read some stuff better.
Yeah, of course. Is that better?
Um, like, did you zoom in on the PDF?
I did indeed, but it's taken a little bit. I will screen share for you so you're able to see as well.
Oh,
Yeah, is that better?
yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can see it now. Yeah, better. Yeah, much better.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We can keep this format for the like the way it looks right now. It's like pretty perfect. Yeah,
Okay,
we
yeah.
are going through
Yeah,
the
good
actual
call
book.
out.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know.
No
I
worries,
wonder
man.
if I could make this bigger too. Yeah, the cons of having a 4K monitor is now it will be hard for anyone who does not have a 4K monitor to read this, and I should get in the habit through streaming. It's been a little bit since I've streamed, so yeah. And anybody listening to the stream, is it? What do you think about the general stream quality, sound quality? Any complaints, or does everything sound good?
To me it feels like great. Like I could see it, I could like read it. Stream not stuttering or anything. I'm not losing frames, so that's great. But I have you muted on like places, so I cannot like check for the audio quality, or like I cannot even say anything about my audio quality. So I can just see stuff.
Yeah, I can turn it on for. I hope. Okay, yeah. Taiwo says the sound is okay. So
Okay, thank you,
it.
Dan.
Yeah. Okay. I did want to turn on the unmute, but then the stream would hear the stream again. So I will. I'll check after and see
Feedback
if
is
it sounds weird or whatever. But I think um that's probably about it for this stream. Then it was just to get the expectations out there, test out stream, and maybe talk a little bit. So yeah, Dev, if you have any more questions, I'm glad to answer. Anybody in chat wants to talk about anything, ask any questions, glad to do so. But we should be about good to end off otherwise.
I don't have any questions. I think you have answered so many of my questions already. So yeah, but yeah, anyone in the chat wants to like ask anything to Jacob, definitely go ahead.
Yeah, otherwise while we're here, I will I don't know, I don't want to go into other tangents, but I've been doing typing practice and hit 100 words a minute on the small amount of letters
That's
that I've done so
crazy.
far, which is very nice. 100 words
I
being
could not
like
even
a one
break.
time, so good stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, like how far you improved, because I think just like 2 3 days ago it was like around 80 something, right? And I couldn't like break the 80 barrier. So I don't know how you improved so fast in just like a couple of days. 100 words is like crazy to me.
Oh yeah, 100 is like the limit, but otherwise I get like an average of 90 for those letters. So it's, I mean, I think I was also surprised, but it's just been literally just type a bunch and practice the things I'm bad at. And I feel like that's pretty good. Just like intentionally not missing any letters has been helpful.
How many hours do you think? Hours, even if it's like that's the amount of like that you spend typing every day. So how much of your time did you dedicate every day towards typing to get this good, this quickly?
I typed 1 hour a day for 5 days.
Oh my god. Okay. Now I can understand it a little bit. Yeah, why are you so fast? 1 hour is crazy to be just spending on a time, like some website practicing typing. That is just crazy.
Okay, yeah, I don't see any comments in the chat. I was just waiting to see if anybody had anything else to say or any questions. But yeah, I think this one would be short anyway. So just to end it off, um, reminder we'll be reading and going through part one. So what is bash, globbing and quoting, variables, functions, pipes, scripts, and then up to loops in part two. So command substitution, exit codes, tests, and loops. And come with any of the questions you have about anything, and I will gladly answer, try to figure it out. If I do know, I'll let you know, and if we don't, we'll figure it out together. So, sounds good, and I will see y'all later. Thanks for coming to the stream.